Hi, I'm Trevor Hall, the founder of Comeback. Welcome to the Recovery Room, where we talk about sport, psychology, injury recovery, and a bit of everything. Hi, good evening. I'm sitting with Chris Dry, former Blitzbock player, second highest caps in the Blitzbox, if I recall. For now. So we're going to talk about Chris's career, a couple of things that he learnt about himself and the world and sports in general, etc. And also his retirement, because Chris retired last year, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So Chris, just to introduce you to our viewers, so you were a former Blitzbock. You played 74 tournaments, one World Cup, one Commonwealth Games, one Olympic Games, 2 World Series championships. You were a Dream Team player in 2016 and 2017. You played Super Rugby, Pro 14 and Currie Cup for the Free State Cheetahs.
Yeah.
Okay, is that all correct?
Yeah,
Got
that's
that
all
right?
correct.
That's quite a resume, actually. Yeah. Student life, while you were playing rugby, you studied your quantity surveying degree, QS degree. I normally use the abbreviation for it. And construction management as well.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, qualified in both of those.
Yeah.
So brawn and brain.
Ah.
There we go. And like I said, you retired last year.
Yeah.
Okay. You find yourself in civilian life.
Yeah. Normal life outside those walls. Yeah.
Cool. Chris, so look, we're in the midst of the information age at the moment, and a lot of people are enjoying listening to and watching people talk about their experiences of things. And it's not often that we get elite sports people or other entertainers and whatnot talking about their experiences that they've had. It's quite a new phenomenon, and it seems to be something that people really enjoy listening to. So I don't want to get too much into the normal, how was your career and what did it mean to you to play rugby, etc., etc. I actually want to get into a few nitty-gritty things. And one of the things I actually want to ask you about, as somebody who's just retired, it's quite fresh, is what you learnt about yourself as a rugby player. What you learnt about yourself and also just the world in general from your career.
Yeah. So, firstly, thanks for having me. Yeah, and like you said, it's the age of info, and it's nice to share, a different experience. And us as ex-sportmen, we listen to everyone else in the business world, and it's lucky to have almost an outside approach. But I think what I've learned, going from a youngster in there and not having confidence or not having self-belief. I think over time you build that confidence. You learn that if there's something that you want, that you can actually get it. And, for me, growing up as a youngster, I was always like a second choice or second team player, and it was like difficult to actually see that if you work hard, eventually it'll come, because there was no reward in the end. And
are you talking about when you were a youngster at school?
Yeah, youngster at school.
And specifically rugby?
Yeah, and rugby, but also academics. And whenever I talk to young kids, I said I was the perfect average, because my parents were waiting for the academics to go up when the sport was down, and the sport to go up when the academics were down, but I was always in the middle. I would find myself there. So eventually you start building this confidence and I wouldn't say arrogance, but you build so much confidence that that success eventually follows. And I think that's one thing that I've almost learned throughout my career, is that yes, hard work, and that's the cliche, work hard and you'll get the reward. But I think for me personally, working hard, yes, and then eventually that hard work, building confidence, and then trying to get success, and do it on a daily basis, and repeat those actions, not only in game day, but in building up to that. I think that's how I found like I've learned a lot about myself regarding that if there's something to gain or something to get, that it needs to be directed, and it needs to be repetitive, and yes, and success will come.
When did you, if you can remember, I mean, I'm not looking for a specific date, but when you started your career, when do you think you actually started to gain that confidence in yourself? And that, almost bordering it as what, I know you made a joke about it earlier, but the arrogance that comes with it, which is actually needed to a certain extent when you're playing at your level.
So what happened was, strangely enough, like I said, I didn't go well at school, didn't play first team, and that year the first team coach became the varsity coach. So I decided I'm not going to that varsity, I'm going to Technicon, I'm going next door. And wasn't selected, first year playing opens, and eventually, one guy left, and there was opportunity for me, and things were looking up, and managed to play in the junior levels, and eventually made the Free State side.
This is for 15s.
This for 15s, yeah. And what happened after that is, like, the next year was, it was going fairly well, but again, coach came to me and said, Chris, to be honest, you're not my first choice again, but you know what, this time I'm just going to back you, and we're going to work towards a goal, and from there we'll see how it goes. And it was just a little bit of taste of it, that someone's backing you, and I had a little bit of confidence in myself, and took that through, and had an extremely good year from that. But it was built on that little bit of, that little whisper in your ear that, Chris, you actually, you're not there yet, but you'll get there. And going through to joining the 7 straight after that, and again being the 5th or 6th choice, and opportunity comes, and you're still not, you're not there yet, you're not on that level, but you've been given the opportunity, and there's a good chance you'll get another one after that if you do your part. And when you're hitting 24, 25, and now you're a starter, and things are looking up, that's where that confidence comes from. And then you're looking from a different side, that if someone has to try and take a position, they're going to have a hard time doing it, because I'm already here, I'm the pillar now, so you have to try and move it. And I think that's where the confidence comes. It hits to a point where you're overconfident. I shared earlier where my mom used to phone me and say, Chris, you haven't told me the team's touring soon, are you in the team? And I said, of course, Mom, of course I'm in the team. And then that was heading towards arrogance, in a sense, in my mind. And a year later I was dropped. So lesson learned, so yeah, there was a big build-up of confidence, but it's those little victories that give you that. And I think that's where I found hitting that confidence to go out and do it repetitively. So yeah.
How did you stay motivated when before you hit that confidence, at that sort of saturation point of confidence that you're describing? I suppose what I'm asking is, how did you maintain focus on that goal of wanting to get into Blitzbokke or into a starting lineup in Free State?
So I always wanted to prove everyone wrong, and that was my whole goal, and almost towards the end of my career as well. I always wanted to prove everyone wrong. You should have selected me. You should have. And then so what happened was that going through, in my mind I always felt like someone owes me something, and I'm going to prove them wrong. And that's what I took from junior levels. And when I got an injury, and you come back and your season's never as good as it was before the injury. And that was my motivation, is just always to try and prove people wrong. And then when I hit a certain point in my career, I stopped and I said, you've proven them wrong, maybe in your head, but you've never proved yourself right. You're always looking at as the external person who's not selecting you, but did you select yourself?
Yeah.
And that's where I always wanted to prove myself right. And that's where I started challenging myself. Like, if I did this today, did I do it? Am I going to do it tomorrow and do it better? And if when I was younger, I didn't have to stretch, I didn't have to do the extras. Are you doing it now? So I challenged myself. Did I select myself today? Yes or no? End of the day, if he doesn't select me, that's on him. So as you mature as going into adulthood, because from the age of 21 to 25, you still, everything's exciting, and always trying to, like I said, prove everyone else wrong. And I think it changes completely when you're not fighting against that person, you're fighting against yourself. And every day, hopefully, you're better. So that's how my focus was.
Sounds like there was quite a stark contrast between that external motivation that a lot of kids have in their sort of late teens and early 20s, going into sports, professional sports, and actually any career really, where there's that external pressure to do well, that comparison and whatnot. And then there was a shift to an internal, what we actually call the internal locus of control, which is your internal motivation system sort of switch on. It's quite age appropriate as well, around sort of 24, 25.
Correct.
You start thinking, okay, well, what am I getting out of this?
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about these guys outside of me. I know I can do it, but how far can I push myself?
100%. And there's always a team or a system that goes through phases where they're going to be 3 or 4 guys challenging one spot, and then there's going to be a season where there's 8 or 9 guys challenging for one spot.
Yeah.
And you're going to go through those seasons where the guys challenging are not pushing you to where you have to be if you want a certain outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's where at the time I was almost frustrated at the time. There was no one pushing me, and I was always waiting for that external, because that was a motivator. So if he ran 190 on a beep, I'm gonna run 191, and then I'm successful, because I beat you. And that was like my mindset. Just beat the guy next to you. And you beat the guy next to you and you go on the world stage and you look like a fool because that guy's been doing this consistently for the past year. And I think that's where you mentally have to, I had to change my whole mindset, because good enough at home doesn't necessarily mean good enough on tour. So that's how, I think it takes time, because it's so easy just to sometimes beat the guy next to you who's challenging you, but it's difficult to sometimes beat yourself because your standard, and I think that's where it comes down to.
Chris, was this a natural shift in you, do you think, or was it something that you learned from external sources? Like, did you have people working with you that were telling you about this sort of thing, or was it something that you came to on your own?
You know what? I think a bit of both. I think everyone who comes into your little circle has influence on you, and someone once told me, Chris, where's your identity? Is it in being a rugby player, or is it in being Chris?
Who was that asked you that, if I may ask?
It was actually just an old family friend. I was sitting down and I was grumpy about a tournament that wasn't going well.
Okay.
And I got challenged, and I said, I'm Chris, but I'm also a rugby player.
Yeah.
So, and that hit me hard, because I was so bleak at the fact that the tournament didn't go well, and that's where I saw myself like as Chris, the rugby player, not being successful, not being happy, all those emotions. So I think it's when you're going through these phases, because that's what rugby is, it's ups and downs, and very high and very low. I think those people influence you in different ways, and that was a big one for me. And also you get coaches that say, Chris, you know what, you're going on tour, you're going to start every game, but I'm looking for someone to replace you, because you're just not where I feel that you can be. And I thought, you're serious? You just told me I'm in the team, and then you said, listen, you can start looking around and I won't be upset. And it was like a mentally challenging, like he put something and I said, listen, I'm not going to go home. I'm not going to climb back on the plane and not.
When was that? If
So
I
that
can
was
ask?
in the beginning, and the person that was coming in,
Beginning of playing
my career,
Blitzbox.
so about 2011, 2012, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was the time where Cornel Hendricks was actually joining the scene. He was a centre at the time, and he was gonna jump into the forwards. And like mentally, like he's this upcoming guy. He's an athlete, he's still playing for Boland, but he's a great rugby player. We all knew that. Yeah. And that was like I don't want to say reverse psychology, but what he says, Chris, you can do better. but again, you're holding yourself back because you're looking left, you're looking right, and you're looking at who you just need to beat. So I think those outside voices, you know, definitely are a factor that pushes you to new standards, you know, and also keeps you humble. I think that's what rugby or sport, you know, professional sport does. It puts you on a high so quickly, but it drops you within seconds of that. So
there's definitely with professional sport generally, there's a hyper focus on goal achievement. It's like that focus becomes so narrow.
Yes.
Team sports or individual sports, you know exactly what you need to do. You know exactly where you're supposed to be going. Your routine, your weekly routine or monthly routines are so repetitive. You know, you're trying to automate yourself to the point where you're not even thinking about what you're doing, because you're thinking just wastes time, basically. And it's such a good example of actually what can happen when you focus on a goal, because that's ultimately what sport's about. You know, and you repeat that. You repeat the process of getting to those goals all the time. Yeah. And it's something just in general life as well that I think is more difficult to do. And I'm sure, you know, you being retired now and going into another career, you know, I suspect you would find more difficult to say, okay, well, what are my goals now actually? Like, what do I want for myself? What do I want for the rest of my life? You know, if I want A, you know, what plans do I need to put in place in order to get there? You know, because you're the one who has to come up with it now. Exactly. In professional sports, especially professional rugby. You're told what your goal is. You know, your coach tells you where you're supposed to, what your goal is, what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to be training, and you just kind of go with that. You know, there's room to flex within those plans and those processes, but I don't know about you, but I remember it being you sort of like meld into the team environment, the team goals, the team purpose, and all of that stuff. Yeah,
it's 100% that, because that's what sport does. You know, we used to go on tour and say, listen, if we got a 85% tackle completion rate, you're going to be successful.
Yeah,
that's just how the game works.
Playing to the stats.
You get 5 out of 6 kickoffs return, and you hang on the ball for 2 phases. That tournament, you're going to be successful.
Yeah,
and 99.9% of the time, it's going to be like that. So there were certain, points where you could reference from, and if you do this and this and this, you're going to be successful. However, is that, like you said, I've changed into a new environment where, I need to come up with these plans because it hasn't been plotted out for me, and the end goal is still unknown because it's something new to me. So, I reckon when the first guys started playing sevens, they didn't know what the outcome was. They just get points on the board, and it's grown over time, and that's where experience comes, and that's where I find myself is like, putting out these little plotting, these little, if I do this, then maybe I can get that, but I'm not sure yet. So there's still a lot of that unknown, trying to find that end goal, because you're
talking in your civilian life now.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So trying to put it like, and what is the outcome? It's difficult to say because I'm not sure where it could be. Again, that confidence where, if I knew if I worked hard and if I did it repetitively and, my discipline was right, there would be a goal, and that was very specific because I was playing rugby since I was 7 years old. So it gets molded into you, and you leave that environment, now you have to recreate it
for yourself.
And being 30 plus years old, you think a lot differently how you would. You're not just gonna go. You sometimes overthink, and you're almost sometimes scared to actually just say, look, let's push a boundary there. Let's put a boundary up there, or let's put a standard maybe a little bit higher than you. Let's not play it safe. And I think that's the difficult part of leaving that environment where everything was plotted out for you. And now go, there's a pen, go.
That's it. Yeah. You're given a blueprint. Like as you signed your first contract, here's the blueprint.
Yes.
And it's literally like it. You get a playbook. Like they're the calls, they're the moves. There's the system.
Yeah. And it wouldn't only be rugby specific. the system that I came from, I call it the system because it literally is.
Yeah.
You get there, and day one, you walked in there and said, before you get a playbook, there's another document, and this is our culture document. You have to buy in, you have to fit in, otherwise the system's going to kick you out.
Yeah.
That was the first thing you had to get right. You had to go study a culture document. Is this what this team stands for? So it's like culturally you had to fit in, you know. Then physically you had to fit in, and then you had to be, you know, you had to fit within that system of play. So
What, can I ask you, I mean, are you allowed to talk about that a little bit, what the culture of the Blitzbokke
yes, of course.
sort of were? What was it? What was in that?
So, you know, when I joined the Springbok Sevens, it was in 2009, 2010 season. They just came off a World Series win where, you know, the year before that, I think they were like 5th or 6th, and no one knew who they were.
Yeah.
And what they did was, and this is the time of Frankie Horn and Sticks and, you know, Paul Dalport, Infant Dazel, those bunch, and Neil Powell was also there. So that bunch of guys, they sat down, they said, listen, what do you want out of the system, and where do you want it to grow to? Because, you know, Sevens wasn't a brand at the time. It was just a thing that guys did when the unions didn't have use for them, or they had some space. So guys would then take opportunity to go play Sevens, to go to Hong Kong, but there was no real, you know, it wasn't a system built on anything yet. They took a time out and they said, listen here guys, we need to create something that, you know, as a person, this is what the system stands for. Individually you have to fit in, and then we'll focus on the rugby. And I think that system has grown, and Paul True started that, and Neil Powell's just developed it.
Did Paul True actually start that?
He started
that. That's interesting.
He started that, and then, you know, like anything, we were talking about, you know, anything, schools, everything develops, changes, the culture changes, grows. And that's what, you know, the system has done. It's grown. You know, you get different personalities. You have to accommodate that, you know. Not affect the system, but you have to understand that some people don't like getting shouted at. Some people like, you have to talk.
Who doesn't like getting shouted at?
I'm that one.
You don't like getting shouted at?
No, but people just react differently. And, you know, some people react to certain things. You have to understand that person. But if you understand what the system's built about, you know, it's never personal. You know,
so what was the Blitzboks, or what is the Blitzboks culture in a few points?
There's a few things that we really value, and I think, you know, one that stands out for me is the, you know, discipline. You know, but it's never spoke about. The biggest one for me is the value of 1%.
Okay.
And anyone can see it, you know, how they want to, but how I saw it was, you know, 1% is actually tiny if you think of the bigger things. But if you do 1% and you're 1% better every single day, you know, by the end of the camp, you're
it's
quite
a lot
well.
of percent.
If you take sessions, you're about 170% up.
Yeah.
But, you know, often you find yourself in a difficult position. You say, listen, guys, we're 12 guys here. If you give 1% more, or you focus 1% more, that's 12% just in the circle. And how we do it consistent basis, that's a value of 1%. Another value would be, you know, no one's ever late. You know, it's a 1%er. Or it's like, you know, it's a stupid thing. Like when you're done, pick up the water bottles, put everything neat.
Yeah.
It's a value system more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's just 1% of rugby. It's not even 1%, it's probably less. You know, no one ever counts, you know, how many times we go and fill up our own water bottles or bring our own ice. It's a thing that now the system does, but we do it. And it's 1%, but, you know, it contributes to our system being successful, then we're going to do it. So we put all those 1%ers in a box. End of the day, you're sitting with a big box, and that builds character. And if everyone buys into that culture, you know, from, you know, cleaning, from packing things away, from small things, you know, putting the other guy first, then, you know, your system's going to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the system thrives with.
You know, when I've watched the Blitzboks, because I like watching Sevens actually, I find it highly entertaining. It's a fast game. Margin for error is really small. And when I've seen you guys play, there's definitely been some sort of camaraderie between, I think in most teams, actually in Sevens, there seems to be it makes sense because it's a small number of people. And I think if you get that culture right, you seem, you know, you can get connected quite quickly.
You rely so much on that person on your inside.
Yeah.
That you have to trust him with everything.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you you know, you might be in front of me, but you're actually not my guy. That guy's, but he has to let me know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't leave you.
A lot of communication.
It's a communication, but it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
So if he says he's there, you know, I'm not going to think twice. And that's how you work through a system, you know, from training wise. You trust that those guys in your team so much that, you know, and if you trust them, you're not going to let them down either. I think that's it, you know, and that's a game of sevens. You know, there's 70 meters, you know, on the field. There's 6 guys in front, 1 guy at the back. You've got a lot of meters to cover if 2 guys on the floor.
A lot. A lot.
So it's a system built on trust, but it doesn't, like I said, it's not only in when you're playing game, you know. I've got to trust the guy that, you know, last night he did some homework because we're training today. And if he says he did, then I back him 100%.
Yeah.
I'm never going to question him.
It's one of the things that I've thought a lot about, you know, since I've been a psychologist actually, was what the role of a psychologist is in a team sport like rugby, and rugby specifically, because my theory, and I mean there is some evidence to, you know, to back up what I'm saying, but it's a lot of it, my opinion as well, is that the performance side of things, you know, but by the time you are, I mean, even in matric playing first team rugby, like, you know how to play rugby. Yeah. Like physically, you know what to do. You're goal directed. You know how to get into process. You know what happens, what can happen that takes you out of process. Yeah. Process being the process of actually playing rugby. You know, like not getting bogged down if you make a mistake, being able to reset yourself, etc. All of these kind of soft skills that you learn through your youth up until when you actually start playing at a high level and professionally. And my theory is that where the work of psychology, from my perspective, and even to a certain extent coaches, but obviously coaches need a coach, you know, because there's skills that need to be implemented and whatnot. But the role of psychology is to somehow promote connection and culture, like what you're talking about. That, you know, a team that's connected with each other, that they know each other, but not just at a superficial level, where they actually know each other enough to trust each other that, you know, they're going to do their job. That and that really builds, you build a culture around the players you have, type of thing. And it's something that actually just, if it's a healthy culture, it actually just sort of starts to grow on its own, like organically. You know, guys do, like somebody will do something stupid and it'll become a ritual, type of thing. Is that something that you've noticed?
Yes.
Or
I think, you know, as soon as, you know, you understand that this guy who's playing in your team, your best mate, he didn't grow up like you did. You know, he maybe grew up on a farm. You know, he comes from a complete different background, and you know how you express certain things to him on the field could affect him massively. And people don't understand that if you understand the individual, like some guys, you know, he's gonna make a mistake, and the only thing he wants is just someone to say, listen here guys, don't worry about it. It's nothing. And then he feels, okay, he can play rugby again. Yeah. You know, and some guys, they say, listen here, you need to stop picking up your hands because, you know, you're letting us down. It doesn't affect him, it boosts him because he knows that, I need to react now. Just stay awake. So the different individuals in the team, if you understand how this guy's mind, how he operates, if you understand him, then you're going to play better rugby. Like certain guys, you know, he's a dancer. Give him some time. You know, like a Branca de Pree, don't rush him. Just give him all the time he wants. He'll tell you, you know, and you'll see it in his face because he'll look at you and say, like, why aren't you here yet? You start understanding each other, and that's when you get good flow. Yeah. But again, it's a total buy-in. And so I say, if you don't buy in the system, you can be the best rugby player in the world. If you don't buy into that system, you know, you're not going to be there for long. The system's going to kick you out. And I think that's what makes our group so special, is that, you know, guys are willing to do whatever for the other, and it doesn't stay on field. You know, it's off field. Guy needs something, guys pull in and everything gets
Well,
sorted.
it would translate into just general life as well. You know, like when you become tight with somebody or connected with someone, the relationship builds.
I think it also helps that, you know, we're a smaller group, you know, 15s, you know, you just go, hey guys, come to my house. 50 of you. Yes. No. You stay with your group, I'm stay with my group.
Yeah.
You know, and now, you know, 7 guys, 12 guys come on tour, you know, max 15 guys. You know, there's going to be 10 guys at your house. It's doable. But that's how strong the group is. Because, like, again, it goes back to you rely on this guy so much.
Yeah.
And with that, you also, you know, you feel for this guy. And you want to protect him at any means possible, you know. So you'll do whatever that he can be successful. If I'm successful, it doesn't matter, because, you know, if the team's successful, then we all are. And I think that's what we thrived in. There's no special, like we said, we always say in a circle, no superstars. We don't need any, you know. We just need to be successful, and then we can all walk on stage and get a medal.
There's so many amazing things that can come from the sport. Really, you know, the stuff that you can actually learn about yourself and each other, and just life. It's like I've always seen it as a very sort of concentrated version of what can happen outside of that institution of rugby. Although, you know, there are also some things that developmentally, you know, players struggle with later on. One of the things is, I think, you know, when we come out of, or when one comes out of a professional career in sports, there can be some lag in terms of, you know, learning just basic skills of actually how to look after yourself, really. Correct. Financially, emotionally, even, because there is this kind of institutionalization that takes place where, you know, teams, although there's so much connection between the players in a team and sports people in a team, coaches, administrators even, and whatnot, they can become quite insular and very exclusive, you know, like almost to the point of superstitious in a lot of ways. You know, like if you've got your core group of guys in Blotzbokke, you know, you don't let anyone kind of into that. Like you said, now your culture is your culture, the system is your system. I'm sure there were players who would, you know, occasionally come into the side and whatnot, and they looked at with skepticism until they prove themselves, type of thing.
It's 100%. Like, so everyone, you know, everyone's accepted. You know, that's one thing that we did do. But you knew from the beginning, you know, you come into the system, you know, it's not going to be easy run for you. Because if I make it easy for you, then I've set that standard as being right. And that's not only physical. It's not only like a wrestling session. It was like, actually, like, I challenged you to, like, did you do the right thing today for the system? And you see guys change. Like, guys change tremendously in our system. We had guys, you know, come from areas where gangsterism was, you know, families all involved. And now a guy is, you know, the softest guy you'll get. He's trying to look after everyone. He's worried about everyone's futures. You know, it's something that's, you know, the system, I don't want to say molds you, because we've got individuals, but it, you know, it puts you in a certain direction where your focus point, you know, is completely different. Your outlook on life is completely different. You do something repetitively, you hang around with certain guys, you're gonna become like those guys.
Look, a healthy environment is normally going to bring out,
of course,
you know, healthy behaviors.
Yes. 100%.
Not always. I mean, there are some guys who just...
Yes. But it's a funny story. Is a New Zealander by the name of Raikam Bula. And he one day came to me and he said, Chris, you know, I want to be honest with you. And he says, you know what I see when I stand on the other side? He says, we got the world's best coach. He's a Sir Gordon Titchens. And he says that our group is so strong that if he wants to come in there, he has to first ask permission. Now, this guy's the most successful sports coach in the world at the time. He had the most successful victories of any sport code in the world. And he had to almost get permission from the guys. It wasn't just walk in. That's how strong their system was and so protected it was. And it made you think, is like, yes, there's a respect level there, but there's also, like, you know, they've got so much belief within their system and what they stand for as a unit that anyone that comes and tries and damages it is going to have a hard time. You're not going to change that system. You know, a guy's going to come in and try and bring his own little theme, you know, but it doesn't fit the fold. It's not going to stay. It's just going to be pushed apart.
Yeah, when you're talking like that, it also, I mean, look, it obviously worked from there. They're a great side, but it also just gets me thinking, that the psychologist in me start thinking about, you know, when these systems can also start becoming a little bit too rigid.
Correct.
and a little bit sort of inflexible and whatnot.
Yes.
And, you know, because it can spin out in another way.
Of course.
You know, there needs to be some flexibility
Of course.
in those teams.
So with the success, you know, comes free reign. You know, the time Coach Neil said, I didn't have to coach anymore because, you know, you guys were doing the right things the whole time. You're looking after the system. You're looking after what I wanted. So I had to almost step back. And then youngsters, the guys leave, and youngsters, he had to take reign again. He said, listen here, guys, listen here. Now you listen to me. I'm going to coach again. And I think that's where it gets to a point where, you know, it's a balance in a sense. But there's a respect level, you know, there. And there's a line, obviously, and obviously we can't cross.
No, look, you guys definitely built something amazing, like from grassroots, which is awesome. Chris, I wanted to talk to you about 2018. You had a bad knee injury.
Yeah.
Talk me through that. What happened?
Yeah, so, you know, I think I came off a 2016 season where I didn't make the Olympic team. And again, it was to prove everyone wrong. And that was the year. And the next year I came out firing and, you know, had an excellent year. Made the dream team. We played in 8 finals. We won 5 of them out of 10. It was just an unbelievable year. Went to the Cheetahs, had a great year. Came back to the Sevens. You know, didn't have to do a pre-season. Back in the team. Win Dubai, and then starting Cape Town and tore my ACL. And I was coming off.
You did your ACL.
ACL, meniscus, you know, some bone bruising. Yeah, so came off this massive high, and walk off the field and think, you know, it's just a knee, you know, because, you know, look at all the success, and all of a sudden just had like completely down to the bottom, because, you know, it doesn't hit you on that weekend, it hits you, you know, a month in, when you know, everyone's carrying on with life again and going on to the next tournament, and you like stuck behind, and you're stuck in the gym, and that's where I think it becomes like a difficult place, you know, trying to find yourself, like still be Chris. Like I mentioned earlier, like, who are you? You Chris the rugby player, or you Chris? Because Chris the rugby player was done and dusted at the time, you know, and I thought, this is the end. So,
did you actually think that was a career ender?
You know, initially, no, but, you know, going through and you know, so what happened was it was going through like a time where I thought, you know what, give me 6 months and I'll play a game again. And I want to play the World Cup. And after 5 months, Springboks were training they were building up to their World Cup campaign in 2019. And they were all training at our facility. And guys would come in. I'm at rehab, and I was running at the time. So I would just join them, and, you know, so much confidence because I'm running again, you know, I'm playing, you know, bashing out some bigger boys, and, you know, obviously rehab, you grow a little bit, so you know,
you put on some
nice.
weight.
Yeah, you put on some weight, and, you know, it's lekker.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel this confidence up, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take an extra few days. They said I'm going to take off, but, you know what, I'm such a high now. I'm just going to keep going, push another week. And then something, you know, wasn't feeling lekker, and I developed a cyclops, which was...
What's a cyclops?
It's basically just a scar tissue that builds up.
Okay.
Yeah, just causes pain within the knee, and had to go for a second op. And I think, you know, from being 6 months in my head playing, you know, to only playing 12, 13 months later. So played the first tournament 12 months later, and...
So you were out for over a year?
Over a year. I only played for the team again, you know, the next tournament, which was 13 and a half months.
And what did that do to you psychologically?
Yeah, so again, you know, I trained so hard to make that team, that Cape Town Dubai, because, you know, that's the tournament. And that would literally be a year. Walked into the office, and coach said, Chris, you're just not there yet. And it was difficult for me to take because, you know, I hadn't been rehabbing for 6 months, which, you know, could have been a normal 8 months, which is as soon as you can. I've been doing it for 12 months consistently, you know, pushing through pain, playing games, you know, and I knew I wasn't ready and I wasn't comfortable, but, you know, in your head, you're still Chris from a year back. And I think, you know, after that, again, let's prove him wrong.
You went to the external again.
I went back, you know, and that was my whole mindset. I wanted to prove
you know,
him wrong.
I'm just joking. I said that jokingly, but it is, you know, that something that happens with injury is that there's a chance of regressing.
Yes.
It like sort of brings out these things in you that,
Yeah.
that you've often worked through before.
Correct.
Like you said, you know,
Yeah.
you've shifted from the external to the internal, etc. And then in that injury, you go
Find
back
yourself
to
back.
what was more deeply ingrained, perhaps, where
Yes.
you went back to, okay, well, I need to prove people wrong again. I need
Yeah.
to show the world what I can do. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you go back to these primitive ways
You do.
of being.
And yeah, you do. And what happened was they was discussing, end of the season, played 2 tournaments, broke a rib, out for 2 tournaments, didn't make the last tour, sat in the office and I said, Chris, you know what, the future doesn't really, they can't see it yet, they can't see how you can ever recover from this because you walk with a limp,
Sure.
and again, I said, listen, give me one preseason, I'm going to prove to myself that I can, because then it started knocking me. I said, Chris, again, it's not them, it's me. And I just needed a preseason. I just needed some time. And I think from there, again, it's changed completely around again. I was running without pain. They say with the knee, 18 months a real thing. It is a real thing. You would know.
I do.
And you in your head, you believe that you are this type of player and this is your standard and this is where you are at, but physically I just wasn't there. And I said, listen, just give me 2 tours, give me 2. I said, give me a contract, and the offer wasn't great at the time, but I said, just give me the opportunity to play 2 social tournaments, and again, focus on myself and what I wanted. And then I think when you hit a point where it's now or never, obviously performance starts coming, but you never want to play out of fear, until you get confidence again. And had a good season again. So that your rugby playing is one part. It's to get your mind and your body to function together and understand where you are at. And I think that's rugby players' hardest thing.
Is that something that really hit you during your injury, that you felt like there was a sort of separation between your mind and your body?
100%.
Yeah.
So you always fall back to like this confident guy. He just came top of the world, and now you can't make the team. Youngsters taking your place. But in your head, you still think it. A year ago I was the best in the world, and now I can't make a team that's not even performing.
Yeah.
So you still believe that you're that person, but your body is saying something different.
Psychologically speaking, I wanted to ask you this question. So during your injury time, do you think, what support do you think you would have wanted that you didn't get? If that was a thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but no, I suppose I already have.
It definitely was. So what happens is that you go into we call it the dungeon.
Yeah.
Because it is a dungeon. You go in, no one sees you. You get there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
You're talking a physical dungeon,
yes,
like facility.
Yes. You get there and you train, all day. You do 4 or 5 sessions. At 2 o'clock you're done, and you go home, and what do? You sit on the couch and you think, listen, I should be, in a different place where I am at.
Yeah.
So what you do is, like, I developed a bad habit. I started smoking hubbly for some strange reason, because I felt like, it's something to do. And, if I'm not busy with something, because you can only physically do so much. You can only do 4 or 5 sessions a day. After that, your body can't. And I started developing this bad habit, just like trying to smoke hubbly the whole time.
Why do you think you developed that habit, if I may ask?
I think it was almost just like an escape for me. It was a time where I could put the TV on and not even watch what is on, and just sit and just escape from this place where you like feel you're not lacquer. And what actually happened, strangely enough, there was a girl actually hurt herself. She had a knee injury, and she was training just probably 6 months prior to mine. And I went in the gym, not knowingly that she's maybe not in a. And I just said, stop looking so tired, just look better. And
you said that to her?
I said it to her. you know, but as a joke, you know. And she just
Some
turned up, she
banter.
says, you know, not a single person has come here and just said, listen, yeah, just keep it. You got a few more months. Then that broke her, and she turned around. She's like, she actually eventually said, Chris, sorry, I had a little moment. I said, you know what, I understand, but I didn't understand.
But she opened up.
She opened up,
It cracked her up a bit,
and 6 months later, I found myself in the same position, you know, and everyone's saying, why are you looking so weak, you know? I said, listen, you train twice a day, training 5 times a day. You know, it's like, it mentally just damages you.
And missing that social connection as well.
You're missing,
you know,
because you can't be part of a circle. And even though you're there next to the field, you know, you're helping with water bottles, or, you know, you maybe coaching on the side, and you're finding yourself roles, you know, that you never thought you could. You're just trying to be part of the group.
I must admit, it's something that, as an ex-player and a psychologist now, it drives me mad that guys, when they're injured, are not supported in that way.
Yeah.
It really does. To me, it's such an obvious thing to be able to promote some sort of social connection with play. And it's the easiest thing to do as well, as coaches, administrators, whatnot. And I mean, look, I think a lot of people, you know, involved in rugby and team sports, you know, they've got jobs to do, etc. But the difference between an effective healing process and one that's less effective, it can be so great with just that little bit of mindful connecting somebody socially.
Correct.
You know, just an administrator coming to you and saying, Chris, how's it going? Like, what's going on here? Or to that girl, listen, what's happening? I see you training. And you were probably a catalyst to her thinking about, you know, what's happening, and, you know, feeling socially connected or disconnected or anything like that. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're complex human beings. But it's something that does, it really, to this day, it drives me mad, because it's such a simple thing and such an easy thing to do, to promote that social connection.
I think that, you know, the biggest thing is that you look at guys with big injuries, then half of them you lose. They're never the same again.
Never.
And you know, the physical part is one thing. You know, they're still great rugby players.
Yeah.
But mentally, you know, there was a gap where he's lost confidence and he doesn't believe he's the same person.
Yeah.
Not the same rugby player, the same person. And I think that's where you have to build yourself up again, you know, as, listen here, body's fine, you know, I'm playing again and it's going well, but, you know, I'm different. Why am I different? You know, why am I not feeling, you know, like I was? Why am I not so happy? You know, why I don't understand this process. And a lot of people, I think it's about understanding as well. You know, I had a youngster with me, you know, who a week before he was 18, he didn't have parents, got our system, tore his ACL. You know, he's sitting next to me, I've got a brace and he's got a brace, but, you know, that was my little project, you know, could work with him and say this, because I'm 2 weeks ahead now.
There we go.
And you know, that guided him, but I needed that as well, because, you know, there was no one telling me, Chris, you know what, you had this process, it's okay to feel like this. You know, you're going to have these days up and down, but it's going to get better. As soon as you start running, I promise you're going to feel 10 times better. Like, you just needed that, because it would keep you going, you know.
So there was so I worked for one of the, I'm not going to mention the names, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but for a professional team in the north, put it that way. And I developed this group therapy approach to support the injury group. I called it the recovery mastery group. And it was based on the idea that when players are injured, this exact thing, one of the ways to get them out of their head and get them connected to themselves is to get them connected to others. So you put all the injured players together. You've got senior players who are experienced, who've been through injuries before. You've got junior players, it's their first injury or whatnot. And the senior players normally end up mentoring the junior players. And the junior players normally end up invigorating the senior players, because they can go, oh, flip, like this guy's so keen to get right. And there are these relationships that develop through the actual weekly therapy process. And I mean, I call it therapy. I suppose it is therapy from my perspective, but it was more of a skills sharing, connecting, relationship building exercise once a week. And to me, it's the simplest thing to do. You know, to be able to promote this type of this type of group within the group. And it's interesting, because I mean, I ask a lot of people about it, and the story is the same. Every time a guy's injured or a woman is injured, they come with the same experiences: loneliness, isolation, frustration, sadness, anger, irritability, picking up bad habits, sleep goes for a ball.
Yeah.
Not everyone does hubbly, but like, you know.
Yeah.
But the other things, drinking.
Correct.
You know, they start drinking the drugs depending on how sort
Yes.
of risk taking or risk averse the person
Yeah.
is.
It 100%. And sometimes you just need a mature figure, you know, because you know when you're younger, or I'm saying when you haven't been in that position before, and something completely new. You know, like the second injury, it gets better. You know, second big injury, because you know that's the process, and they say you got through it there, and this the steps. And yes, you wouldn't do that. You'd rather do this. You know, you wouldn't stay awake till 1 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep because you're thinking about things. Sleep, you know, and wake up fresh, and then you can train better. You know, it's small things like that you know that, and like I said, it's not massive. You know, all you need sometimes is just a little bit of saying, listen, you know, you're right. Like,
Looking good, yeah.
you're looking good.
There you go.
Okay. Well, you're not feeling well. You won't feel good because you just replaced a knee ligament.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to feel better in 3 months. You know, so wait for 3 months and then we'll chat again. It's like a
Let's
small.
chat. Let's talk about it. You know.
You know, and how did you wake up this morning? You wake up upset. You know, why are you upset? Nah, just, you know, do you want to go for coffee?
Yeah.
You know, talk about anything else but rugby, and you feel 10 times better. You know, it's just that there's this here, you're not alone. Like you said, that loneliness, because that's where, you know, even though, you know, the manager and the coach always, how's it going? You well, you're looking good, you're fine. But you need sometimes, just need some time with someone. You just need time away from, you know, while you're not in between a set, you know, you need just time out of that environment.
Yeah.
Just say, listen, yeah, let's chat, yeah.
And it's one of the times in a professional athlete's life where they're actually the most open to learning about themselves, and you know, the most open to actually confront themselves, like that difference between Chris the rugby player and Chris the human being.
Yes.
That's the injury time is the time where you really can start to confront Chris the human being and what it is you want for yourself, etc. You know?
So what I did was I studied for 3 years, and I stopped studying because I was a rugby player, you know, for
Of
4
course.
years. And then I had my first hip surgery. I thought, yes, if this hip surgery doesn't go to plan, then what then? You know what, Chris, you better start studying, you know? And that's why I started studying again. You know, I learned so much that, you know, this is not, you know, if rugby is not everything.
It was through your injury you actually decided to start
I said,
studying.
Chris, you need to get your things in order. You know, you need to start getting your things in order. How much money do you owe the bank? I was like, get that done. You know, you don't need to owe the bank money.
Yeah.
Stop it now. You know, small things like that. So I think you do learn a lot about yourself, and you also learn like, what about like, you know, outside this protected wall, what is there? You know, and like I said, who are you outside this rugby player?
Chris, last question. What are your expectations for civilian life? Where to next for Chris Dry?
Yeah, I think it's something, you know, I would say I try to block out, you know, often, you know, because if there's no real answer to it, then, you know, you at the moment I'm finding myself in construction. Like I did start, always had an interest in it, you know, but like goal wise, you know, I've set that apart, trying to find my feet. You know, it's taken me, you know, a year since I've stopped just to put out like what I actually want to do. You know, where do I actually want to be? Where do I want to stay? You know, like rugby forces you have to stay close to the stadium where you're training. You know, do I want to stay here? I don't know. You know,
you've got a whole world to choose from now.
You've got, but you know, for me, you know, I think going out of rugby, it takes a lot of time from family. And I think that's the one thing that I'll never get back. It's like, you know, I started playing, my parents were you know, just almost 50. You know, now they're over 60. You know, they're a lot older. I've missed a lot of time with them. I missed all my friends' weddings. You know, I've missed, you know, a lot of family and friends and that. And I think my focus point, yes, I want to be successful, you know, in whatever I choose to do. But, you know, I do want to, you want to try and play catch up on life, you know, and spend time with people that are important to you. And I think, you know, for me, you know, you're saying where to, you know, I'm not sure where I'm
It was
going.
a trick
Maybe in
question. I was
career,
just testing you.
career-wise, I'm not 100%, sure. I can't answer that. But mindset-wise, is that I definitely, want to keep on building my relationship with my good mates, and spend quality time. When half your mates stop playing rugby, you're still playing rugby.
Yeah.
You're forced in this environment that all your time is there. Your Saturdays, if you're not on tour, you're tired, and you've got a girlfriend, she wants to do this, and there's not always that time. I think going on holidays, December, always away. Like I said, my birthday, I had one birthday at home, and that was when I was injured.
Sure.
Yeah. So never had a birthday. I was fortunate enough to have one birthday. So I think going forward, I'd love to say, retire on a yacht in in the Bahamas, but I don't think that's important for me. I think for me, you wanna find your place in society, and you want to fit in a sense that you want to be comfortable enough to spend time, but also financially secure in a sense to have that freedom. And I think that's freedom that's I'm looking at more than anything else.
You want to find some meaning in
Correct.
relationships and finding some sort of freedom. That's cool. Chris, thanks so much for being on the Recovery Room. I've really enjoyed it.
I think, as a question from, say, ex-sportsmen, maybe someone like you, it's like coping mechanisms when it comes to going to these points where you are down, or you find yourself injured or in a hole, like mine was going to a hubbly, or, not sleeping at night, that was mine. But like my question is, like, I started reading after that, and all of a sudden I fell asleep in a half an hour. Are there like certain things that, rugby players can look like education, or is there certain things that could rather, guys can look at,
Look, I think during the injury process, there are lots. So through the research that I've done, there are 5 main, I would call them skills, but they're things that you can do to help the recovery process along, and to, like you said, to bridge the gap between mind and body. Because I like the way you put that. It felt like you were sort of separated between mind and body. And a lot of the researchers said, first of all, social connection, social support, that is the main thing that will promote more effective healing and a feeling of basically existing in the world. We know that people who are socially supported through family systems, through friendship circles, through mentorship, they just do better in life.
Yeah.
Across all domains, education, work, relationships, you name it. And whether you're introverted or extroverted as well, social support is a huge, huge thing. And I would suggest to people, even people who are a bit socially awkward, etc., to really at least find one person or 2 people and purposefully go and actually talk to them about what's happening with them. Like you grab someone, you say, listen, I'm going to talk to you now, but I'm feeling this, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling not feeling great, or whatever it is. In the comeback program that I've designed, that's one of the task sets. It actually asks you to, through the 6-week rehabilitation program, to go and find someone or 4 different people during the course of the 6 weeks and actually talk through a few prompts. And it actually takes you through exactly what you ask and examples of what you can express to this other person, etc., and then you write it down. The other thing is journaling. For me, writing things down is one of the best ways of sorting stuff out in your mind. So even talking something through it, I mean, that's what psychotherapy is. You talk, the person comes in and talks, and they organize their thoughts. They organize themselves, actually, through talking things through with someone witnessing them. Because even if you think about it now, if you're on your own, you've got a whole lot of thoughts going through your mind at any given stage. But as soon as you speak that, the first thing is you can speak it out with no one else around, and you can think, oh, that didn't sound good, or that sounded strange. And then if you say that same thing to someone else, it actually sounds even stranger, or it can sound very sort of in line and organized and whatnot. So And the same thing happens with writing. So if you write something, if you think about it, you got to think something through. You got to organize those thoughts, and you got to use your hands physically to actually write or type or whatnot.
Yeah.
So you actually it helps you to process all of your thoughts through visually, through your mind, and actually physically as well, using all of these different what we call modalities to organize what it is that you're thinking and feeling and whatnot. So social connection, journaling. Then I would say thinking about routines. Okay, being mindful of what routines am I picking up. You with the Hubley, you realize, I mean, if you're smoking Hubley all the time, it's probably not a good thing for a South African 7-a-side blitzbokker. Blitzbock. Okay, so to be mindful of those things. Visualization and meditation, excellent things that you can do to actually just help sort of de-stress yourself, calm down, and get to know yourself really. And then tracking your recovery. So creating, you know what micro goals are.
Yes.
So especially with the injury process, to be able to keep your overarching goal of, I want to be right realistically after an ACL, for example, after 8 months. Okay. But in order to get to that 8 months recovery, I need to actually formulate a plan week to week. In this week, I'm going to do this, and that week, I'm going to do that, and actually formulate all of these things and start creating little micro goals. And they need to be achievable as well. Because if you're looking at the end goal all the time, you're not.
Yes.
You're not. If you're not achieving that, you're gonna feel as though you're failing, basically.
Yeah.
And that feeling of failure takes you back. It regresses you to those old habits.
Yeah.
In terms of rugby players, generally speaking, I think that, and especially with retirement and whatnot, I think that the sooner rugby players can go and do things like find career assessments, studying, I think, is incredibly important. And I mean, you don't have to study degrees. I mean, you're lucky. You're clearly a smart guy and whatnot. You know, you studied quantity surveying and construction and whatnot. But even just, you know, a diploma in marketing or something, you know, just to keep your mind active a little bit. And also that you can get out of that very exclusive rugby playing environment from time to time. It's important that players, you know, socialize and whatnot with people outside of that environment from time to time. It just keeps them fresh, if that makes sense, so that they don't kind of become too rigid in that environment.
Yeah.
You know.
Awesome stuff.
But I think also the career assessments and education, it's a big one. Because a lot of guys come to that retirement age, and I don't know anyone who's retired and hasn't gone through at least a year of feeling really, really low.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of confusion that can come from it, and it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes a good couple of years before you sort of reconsolidate yourself into this human being where you feel like, oh, flip, I've got agency, and I can actually, you know, I can actually go out with my friends on a Friday night. I'm not playing tomorrow.
Correct.
You know, I don't have to feel guilty for, you know, wanting to spend time with these people or stay up until 2 a.m. because I'm having a good time or whatnot. You know, it does take time to get out of that mode.
It's awesome stuff.
I hope that answered.
No, it does, you know, because we've got guys permanently always injured, you know. And, you know, the first thing when you're injured or wounded, you go climb in a little hole. That's actually the opposite of what you should be doing, you know. Guys want to, you know, no one really cares, so I'm going to go climb my little hole. I'm going to train, go home as soon as possible. I don't have to see anyone. And it's like the opposite approach sometimes.
So many players do that. And it needs to, that's exactly right. That there needs to be that slight push from time to time to get out of that insular way of thinking about things when you're injured, and just go and, you know, a friend, a family member, you know, and talk to them about things, express.
Yeah. Great.
In my opinion. Chris, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks
for
again.
having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We'll chat again, I'm sure.
Hopefully.
We will.
Cheers.
Thank you.